All right, welcome back, everybody. This is Ryan Nieders with Omnilucid Media, and I am here with fellow members Brian Skoll and Matt Miller, as well as a friend of ours, Jeremy, who's going to be sitting in. So this is going to be the Omnilucid Media Episode 3, and this is going to be, as Matt likes to call it, a discussion cast, where we're going to be talking about some of the events that have been going on, specifically the Georgia Tech shooting, but we're also going to cover some other issues as far as people playing the victim, getting into probably a little bit of police brutality and other issues going along with that. So we'll just go ahead and jump right into this.
Opening statements. Ryan, you're a bitch. That's it. Let's go.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so
vote on that?
So basically we're starting with Georgia Tech. I'm sure most people have already seen the video of this student who was the student leader of the LGBT community. And,
Scott Schultz.
Yep, and his name was Scott Schultz. He was 21 years old. And
I didn't know he was so young. Damn.
Yeah. So he was a third-year student, and I actually right now I'm blanking on what it was that he was majoring in, but
Engineering.
Engineering, yes. So majoring in that, and during the incident, which I would recommend everybody, just go and check out the video if you're curious about what we're talking about. But
it's not too graphic, but it's still disturbing.
The scream at the end is what I think would get most people. So, yes, it is a graphic video for anybody that does watch. But basically this confrontation happens where Scout pulls what the police at the time thought was a knife. Later it was discovered to be a multi-tool, like a Leatherman. If you're not sure what that is, it's just a tool with almost like a Swiss Army knife in a way, except it has a pliers on it. So it does have a knife. It does have a few other items on there. But Scout had approached police, and at the time he was walking towards them. I believe there was 3 cops on scene at that point, which they were trying to get him to calm down. And Scout kept yelling at them, shoot me," and charging them, despite the cops telling him to stop. So, with that, basically we wanted to discuss kind of what happened in that situation and then bring it into the broader issues of what else could have went on. Basically, this is by definition a suicide by cop.
What is known of the facts that I've seen so far? First off, he was president of the gay and transgender student group. He identified as being non-binary, bisexual, and intersex, which means he wanted people to only call him they or them. So he had suffered from mental health issues in the past and depression. He has a history of it, and tried to commit suicide 2 years prior to this. He wrote 3 suicide notes, and the family lawyer denies the suicide, but after finding the 3 suicide notes, and then the FBI also realized that he was the one who called in the cops on himself, gave his description of himself, saying that he was dangerous and wielding weapons and guns, and so he gave them. So it's pretty clear
Everything they needed.
Yeah, everything they needed to do what they were going to do. So that's pretty much where we stand so far on that. Monday night, about 50 people marched to the campus police department.
Yep.
And set fire to a cop car and then assaulted 2 officers. There were 3 people arrested in that. So
was it they only assaulted 2? I know that there were two officers that were injured, but I thought there was either way some cops were injured in the event because a mass of people went to attack them.
That's
Yeah, so with that, some people were claiming as to, why didn't they use non-lethal measures, and I looked into that, which the campus police chief said, everybody's asking, why didn't they use a taser, and I know the Scout's mother was saying the same thing, why didn't they just tase him,
This is the craziest part.
And they said that, well, they don't actually carry tasers, they do carry pepper spray. So that would be one other non-lethal measure that they could have used. Now, the thing is, I don't know what type of pepper spray they have. I don't know, because if it's just, as far as I know, most cops don't carry, the big pepper spray guns that shoots the like stream of pepper spray, 10 feet or however far that thing shoots. Most cops just carry...
No, they don't have the bear can.
Yeah, they just carry the basic little, inhaler size ones that, can maybe spray, I don't even know if it can make it a foot. I mean, not very far.
Yeah, if you had a knife, they weren't going to do that.
Exactly.
Knives are close range.
Yeah, exactly, and that's
but
the thing.
No tasers, that's kind of surprising.
No, handheld ones can go more like 5 feet.
5 feet?
You can
Okay.
you can get somebody from a good distance away. There's absolutely no reason why this kid should have been killed. There's no excuse for it. I completely disagree with their actions. If, the fact that to me, it speaks to a need for more training on the police part, because they do not know how to handle conflict, and they should have been able to. There have been enough cases and enough examples of well-trained police who have been able to disarm and talk down people in touchy situations with proper training, with proper know-how. There was no reason why they couldn't have wrestled that kid down. 3-on-1, and the kid was. Look how small he was, how skinny he was. This kid was not a threat. He was not a threat to anybody who had actual experience in how to handle these situations. So the mother's right. Really, I mean, this kid had mental health issues, first and foremost, and you're on a fucking college campus. A college campus. So these kids, they're paying to go to a place, assuming they're going to be protected, assuming that, people are taking into consideration, who they are, and I mean, they're customers. They need to be treated, it's a place where privilege applies. You don't come swinging with guns at a college campus.
Right. I was just, yeah. So the point you're making, I would say that, yeah, with some, obviously, depending on the situation. Obviously, if he had been there with a gun waving it and pointing it at cops, then, that's a completely different situation. It doesn't matter if you're on a campus and you're waving a gun around. But yes, in this situation, when it was, again, they didn't know for sure what it was, but they thought it was a knife. And that's the thing, too. Out of the 3 cops, 2 of them, that's what they were doing. You could tell that there's a male and a female that are both trying to talk him down, trying to get him to talk to him. And then there's a third male, I'm assuming male from the voice. Yeah, all that identity stuff. But I'm assuming, another male cop who actually was the one that shot him. So it sounded like at least 2 of the police were doing what they should have done. What I was a little more surprised about is the fact they said they were campus police. And from what I had seen, I mean, when I was at NIU myself, the campus police did not carry guns. If they were legitimate campus police that were there,
I'm stuck on this no taser gun thing.
Yeah, the campus police did not carry actual guns. I believe they carried tasers, pepper spray, and they had a baton. But
that might just be the difference between North and South.
It could be, and that's what. Again, this is just my own.
9/11.
That's true too. Well, no, because it was post 9/11 when I was in college, so.
Yeah, but there, as far as school shootings go,
we've had a lot more school shootings.
Just in the last 3 years.
Right.
There's no reason the funding could. The taser guns can't be more expensive than fucking regular guns, so that's just shocking to me.
Yeah, that's the most stunning part for me as well.
Right. I would, for the most part, agree with Brian on the fact that I don't think that this kid should have been killed by any means. I know that police training is to shoot center mass, but even if you felt that it was absolutely necessary, and I'm not convinced that it was, but if you felt that it was absolutely necessary to shoot this kid, I believe that this would have been one of those cases where, shoot the kid in the leg. I mean,
he wasn't moving that fast.
Right. Like I said, in the video, there's only one time when he moves pretty quick at one point. And, hearing the story ahead of time, I thought for sure, this is going to be it. This is where this kid's going to get shot. And it didn't happen. So,
I think it was the cop that was by the garage entrance, and he was kind of had nowhere to go. And I thought he was being backed up into there. I was like, oh, that's the one that's going to blow into him. But
yeah, see that. Cool. Well, I felt like he still had room to go because I mean, once he got behind the barricade, the whatever that thing is, the gate bar or whatever. Once he got behind that, I mean, he had a physical barrier in between him. So once he got behind there, I was like, oh yeah, he's good. There's absolutely
no. He'd have to like take his eyes off the guy and hop over or something, and I would understand him feeling a little cornered, like, oh shit, is he going to jump at me?
Right.
But that's not what happened. So I'm just saying that's what I thought was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. So, kind of going off of that, unless you guys had anything else to comment on that specific case or story, whatever.
No. Other than death by suicide, death by suicide is a serious.
Suicide by cop, you mean?
Or death by suicide. Jesus Christ.
It's the K.
Oh my God, suicide by cop. That I think I want to touch on real quick.
Yeah.
Let me see some interesting stuff. Well, first on suicide in general. Okay, this kid obviously serious a history of mental health issues, and that we can get into later as far as how that ties to gay and bi and the LGBT community has a specific problem with depression and higher degree of suicide rates than normal. But aside from that though, it's 40,000 deaths a year in suicide. So that's the 10th. It's the 10th leading cause of death, and for people aged 15 to 34, it's the second killer. So
is this just the United States, or?
Yeah, just in the United States. Every death costs an average of $1 million per death. And they're calculating the scope of that death affecting a range of, on average, 10 people. They're counting, lost revenue from work and funeral costs in addition to all the numbers that they're factoring. So it's an expensive problem as well. But as far as suicide by cops go, 95% have been male and 5% female, with the mean age 35 to 40. 62% of men who have killed themselves suicide by cop, and 100% of women have had a history of mental illness who have done it. So 80% of the men who were killed by cops were armed, and 100% of the women. And then 87% of both sexes have made some kind of suicidal communications prior to or during the event. So that's just a bit of a history, briefly, of what I could find on the stats that they do know on that. So, but that leads into other issues as far as like statistics go on the police and them not keeping track. And I don't know if you want to get into that right now, Ryan.
No,
so I'll let you.
Yeah. So I want to get into that a little bit farther in. So, with this, the thing that I wanted to kind of bring up, going after this with the whole suicide by cop thing, I've definitely noticed, and I feel like most people have, with everybody playing the victim. So this is going to be kind of the more pro cop part of the podcast, and then we'll switch roles and do the whole devil's advocate thing and all that. But so with everybody playing the victim, which I think is just, I don't know if that's what it is that's going on, but everybody seems to think that if you're the one that gets injured, it's automatically the other person's fault, no matter what, no matter who they are. Just all around playing the victim part. Now, clearly, if you're innocent or you get attacked or something like that, then yes. But what I'm talking about more specifically, with cops in general, if you attack a cop, and I'm talking like go up to them and start beating them or pull a knife on them or pull a gun especially, you should already pretty much understand that there's a pretty good chance that something bad is going to happen to you. And the fact that people are getting into this whole mindset that, and it's especially when people are killed. And again, it's obviously it's going to be a little bit more of a hot button topic if somebody is killed. But the fact of, if someone's kid is going in and beating the shit out of somebody, or whatever. Say somebody's robbing a bank and they have people at gunpoint. Cops come in, they shoot this kid, and then next thing you know, the family's like, oh, they were such a good person. You didn't have to kill him. You didn't have to shoot him. Whatever. It's like, no, the person is threatening other people's lives. They are armed. They could kill them. It's that's a perfectly reasonable course of action. Now there may have been other ways to go about it, but I'm just saying that that is obviously one of the things that is possible to happen. And the other point I want to make before you guys kind of give your thoughts is it's the same way with not involving cops. If I hate when I see these stories of someone goes in to rob. We'll just say someone goes in to rob a gas station, and they come in guns blazing, and the person behind the counter, the cashier or the owner or whatever, they pull a shotgun or they pull a gun and they shoot the person, and then that person's trying to somehow sue, or the family's trying to get involved and sue because this guy he got shot. And it's just, to me, it's you have to figure, if you're willing to cause harm and you're going to do something violent, then you had better expect that someone may harm you back. It's not wrong for somebody to defend themselves, and if you get shot because you pull a gun on someone, that's your own fault. It's not the victim's fault because they decided to fight back. So yeah, I'm gonna stop there and let you guys kind of weigh in on that. Or not.
Amazingly, I don't know if you guys know this, but just a couple days ago, there was a case like what you just mentioned, Neaters, where a man came in with a knife and a gun to a convenience store, or maybe it might have been something a little bit different, but either way, he decided to rob this place. And there was an older man, I think he was like in his 60s, who was sitting at a table and saw what was going on, and he went to go stop it. So he hit the robber in the back with the chair that he'd been sitting on. And the robber turned around, there was a scuffle, and the robber actually stabbed the older man, like, in the neck. And then the older man somehow managed to take control of the situation. I didn't see the whole video. But he got a hold of the knife, and he stabbed the robber 17 times. Now, the robber survived, and he's in police custody. He might still be in the hospital right now. It didn't really say how deep any of the wounds were, but the older guy stabbed him 17 times, subdued him, waited till the police arrived, yada, yada, yada. And now the robber, who is going to jail for attempted robbery minimum, and assault of a deadly weapon, is countersuing the old man who stopped him for excessive brutality. I shit you not. He stabbed this guy in the neck, and then he got his ass beat and stabbed 17 times, and now he's trying to sue, effectively, the hero of this story for excessive brutality, even though he obviously tried to kill that man. Well, and it's just, the audacity astounds me.
That's the exact kind of stuff that I'm talking about.
First off, there are right and wrong places to stab somebody. Jesus, 17 times.
Yeah.
He might have thought, well, I got stabbed in the neck, so I might die, so I might try to finish the job.
Yeah. No, that's heartless.
It was mostly in the shoulder and back area.
And that that comes into the point, though, like I was discussing earlier, is the fact of. And, when you say, oh, he stabbed him 17 times, it sounds excessive. But to me, I look at that and it's like, yeah, but was the guy still fighting the old man? Because if the person is still fighting back and this old man is trying to stop him, especially after being stabbed in the neck, and who knows what, if he was bleeding out or however bad that wound may have been. But, at that point, it's like, you bet your ass I would do the exact same thing. If, I'm fighting somebody, it's like, stab. Oh, you're still going? Okay, I'm going to keep stabbing until you stop trying to attack me.
That's true. You keep stabbing until they stop moving. Generally how that goes.
Yeah.
Well, and there's sort of this general air of people being this sort of post-violent critique of people's actions when they're in the midst of complete chaos, riding an adrenaline high that most people don't know how to ride, and then they do something stupid or something insane happens, and it's like as soon as you open the door to violence in any way, you have to take into account the potential risk for it escalating to the point of death. Freak accidents happen, like, not to mention, okay, nobody died in this sense, but it got way out of control, and mostly because people don't know in general how to handle themselves in a violent situation, and then on either end of that interaction. So it's like it's sort of like, oh well, I would have done this or I would have done that. It's like no, unless you're in those situations, you don't know what the fuck you would have done, because most people aren't in those situations.
Right. That's even going into when you do hear of like these, I guess you just call it like brutal retaliations. You kind of like when you hear about, the person came in and they attacked this, they attacked this man or this woman, or who, they attack somebody, and the victim fights back, and they have, a baseball bat or a hammer, and they just, like bludgeon the person to death, and then they're still hitting the person even though they're dead. Well, yeah, because they're in full-on panic, adrenaline mode, and they're freaking out because they, potentially nearly died. It's like, yeah, everybody's like, oh my God, he's a psycho because he just kept hitting him with that bat, and he just kept going even though the guy was already unconscious. And it's like, well, yeah, because they're panicked, they're freaking out, they don't know what to do, they nearly died. They're just making sure that the threat is gone,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we just can't gauge that, people that don't understand that. And to Ryan, your first part about the sympathy for the people that like are violent first, and this is going to bring race into it because it just happens to be the example. But there was that woman that she was in her apartment, and the cops were coming and looking for her baby daddy, and I forgot her name, but when they kicked the door in, she had a shotgun or a rifle of some kind and her baby in the other hand, and like the cops lit her up because you
can't answer the door with a gun and like expect him to get shot.
Yeah, and then they were like, oh my God, these cops, they shouldn't have done that. She had a baby in her arms too, and it's like she also had a gun.
Yeah, I mean, like, who wouldn't choose? I might accidentally kill that baby, but I'll save my own life.
Yeah, they got to worry about
make that choice in a heartbeat.
They were just going on about she's this victim, and it was mostly because it was the cop on black crime, and everybody just, and by everybody I mean the left, not to get in that again, but it's true, all these protests and all this stuff, and I remember like saying like categorically like, okay, yeah, I think that's a clean shooting, it's unfortunate. And then there was a video that she released of herself in her car, and this comes to her character and the character of some of these people, where she got pulled over, so she decided to start recording, and one of her kids was in the back, and she was going on and on and on to this kid about how the cops are against them from birth, don't trust the cops, this and that, and the little kid was like, he didn't seem that bad, and she's like, I know he seemed nice, this one, but, and like, it's just crazy, like,
well,
anti-cop stuff is insane.
Yeah, the anti-cop stuff though is somewhat justified, in many respects. You get
to brainwash these kids though, that like every cop is going to shoot you first,
because that's what they. Yeah, there's a world that they grew up in though, and I mean, I used to ride the bus with in Chicago with black people who weren't that old, and remember getting completely ignored where there were buses, the buses wouldn't pick them up. This is not that long ago. The segregation issues and it doesn't in any way justify being violent. Not in any way. No. It doesn't justify anything. But
the way it's presented,
factual,
though.
Yeah. It's something factual to point to because they do have a point. More black people are incarcerated. More black people are killed. Like, the numbers are lining up with them. So there is dialogue. There is it's just taken so far. It's taken way too far. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Is there?
And you see the right talk about the reasons though to that can be like on one side it's like okay, there's this cop culture, but then there's also the personal responsibility side of the way their lives are and how they're brought up and just so many other things that when I saw that video of that woman like indoctrinating her kid that way, it's that because in their mind they're going to be like, okay, so I'm walking down the street and I see a cop and he's going to do something to me whether I'm doing anything or not, and then they start being angry or pissed off or they go looking for trouble, and it's like I don't know, it's this cerebral thing that I can't get behind.
This is like the trickle down effects though of it was like the CIA campaign against the Black Panthers, right? Or like Martin Luther King, that sort of movement, where they villainized, what was it, crack. Cocaine was okay because that was the white person drug. But they went after crack hard, and that's what you found in all the black neighborhoods. And they just basically used that as an excuse to disrupt them.
Yeah, there is evidence of government involvement in the 70s to for lack of a better term, ghettoize black neighborhoods. Oh yeah. And there is proof of that, no doubt. But nowadays, it kind of falls apart because you see more and more everybody in those situations. So more and more, that argument is starting to get less and less accurate.
Well,
I'll acknowledge it might not be just a black problem anymore, but I feel like it is still far more prevalent in their communities.
Oh yeah, it is. But I think the culture as a whole, though, is also part of that. Because you imagine being a cop and having to patrol a neighborhood like that, where you know that everyone you see on the corners are probably looking for you.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that too. They definitely have also a culture issue. It's not just persecution by the police and leftover government programs, but
and
still.
Ben Shapiro would say it's because people are having babies and families out of wedlock, and when you hear that, you're like, God damn it, Ben. But then you look at the statistics he talks about, where it's like married black couples that have kids are just as good off, and I'm like, maybe that's true then.
Well, because no one wants to talk about the importance of the family dynamic. You need a mother and a father. You don't, because each one plays a different role.
Or a mother and a mother.
Whatever.
Basically, parents.
I don't care about the fucking sex.
I know, I'm just kidding.
Roles, those roles are there for a reason, and they have both. They each have positive effects, and they can have negative effects, not only for immediate health mentally of the child, but they've found long-term psychological effects. Like men who don't have strong father figures or abusive father figures or absent father figures, for example, tend to die sooner from heart-related injuries or from heart-related deaths. So there's just shit like that happens. It's like, okay, when there isn't a family unit present, there is measurable issues that arise, and so, like, yeah, it's great if you can do it as a single mom, but, you should really probably have somebody, and that's just back to the matter.
Because that goes into the fight against, because I remember when I first heard Ben say that, and I wasn't a fan yet, and I was still, on my super left side, and I'm like, this is fucking racist. And then he said, the statistics, and I looked them up, and I'm like, oh my god, where's the racism for the married black families then, if that's 100% true?
Yeah.
And then people complain because it's like, well, you can't tell people when to have sex, or that they shouldn't do this, or that they need to have... And it starts to get into that weird kind of social religious morality. And it's like, I don't know, it gets muddled. It's so fucking confusing when I try to think about what I think is right about it.
Well, I think I'm going to go the Sam Harris route and be like, okay, well, what is true, and what is true in relation to quality of life? Right? What leads to a better quality of life? And that's where running the numbers and seeing what happens and looking at populations, that's where you can look at. People can look and you can see, like, what coincides with people having a better life and what doesn't. you know, and yeah, having a family who's there for you, surprise, surprise, it leads to a better fucking life, you know. So yeah, there's like, but it goes back to like, how do you defining what's real, defining what's true, and having that awkward conversation, because everyone has their own unique truth that they want to like seems to believe that they can restructure the nature of reality with. You know, it's like, look, I know you're special, but your truth really coincides with like, it has to coincide with reality, or you're just making shit up, or you're in for a terrible life.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable too to think about, because when you smash part of that narrative of it's just the white man bringing the black man down, which people that hear me just say that might think I'm exaggerating, but that's a lot of what BLM is saying. Again, it's like, you know, the old Saturday Night Live sketches in the 70s, but that's what a lot of them are saying. When you break that narrative a little bit with the statistics of the family, that takes away the bad guy a little bit and puts the onus on, to bring it back, personal responsibility. And people don't want to deal with that. If you tell them that their lifestyle is the reason they're fucked. You're poor because you don't go look for a better job. No, I'm poor because of this and this and this. And I think that's part of the problem too.
Is how many of those family units are disrupted by, like, just repeat misdemeanor drug offenses? Like, you get caught with weed 3 times and you're locked up. How many families are disrupted by that?
No, that plays a part in it too. Absolutely.
The fun little stat on SWAT teams. They've gone from being deployed in the 1980s. 1980, they were deployed 3,000 times for all of America. 2005, it was 45,000 times. Last year, it was 50,000. They are deploying SWAT teams now for basic drug busts, like suspicion of dealing. So, like, these aren't charges where like they know this is a drug lord and we need to go and bring the fucking house down. These are like minor drug offenders who are going to end up spending way too long in a prison system that just wants to eat them. So yeah, I mean, there is a serious problem with that for sure. And the black communities feel it harder, unfortunately, because they, just because of this socioeconomics of all that, where how that plays out.
To Jeremy's point about the drug thing, that adds to what I said too. That adds another layer that has to be talked about instead of just good guy versus bad guy. So there's a lot of those. And a lot of the media and a lot of the left versus right shit, one side doesn't talk about it, and when the other side does, it just spirals in this toilet mess of none of this is helping solve anybody's problems.
Well, that's where you get into, that's a common problem with just about everything, is the fact that both sides need to take accountability. Whenever you get into that situation of, oh, it's his fault and only his fault and it has nothing to do with me, clearly that's not going to help the situation. It's, it could be that, that, oh, well, I was dealt a shitty hand, and, because of the socioeconomics and all that. But at the same time, it's kind of like, all right, you were dealt a shitty hand. That sucks, but just by you just sitting there and complaining about it, that's not going to improve anything. You have to be willing to go out and actually improve, help yourself, instead of just sitting back and just complaining. And that's not just like, talking about like the black community and any of those issues there. But I mean, any problem, if you sit there and just say, oh, well, I was dealt a bad hand, and oh, you should give me this and give me that, and you should be the one to fix this for me. I'm not going to do anything about it. You do it for me. That's just not going to change.
One more time, so that people can call me racist. There are more programs now for like universities to get black students in there with grants and stuff that other minorities can't get. So to add some more ammo to making me sound racist.
Well, that's actually to jump in on that. So when I was working at the medical office, one of the women's sons, he was trying to get he was trying to go to school to become a doctor, and he had tested high, had amazing grades. He had done like all the volunteering and going to third world countries to practice medicine there and all that. And he did like all his pre-med so that he was able to do that. But because he was a white male, he could not get in anywhere because the colleges specifically told him, one, you're not a woman, and two, you're not a minority. And they have to have and these are, I don't remember which colleges these were, so I couldn't tell you that. But all of the ones that he was looking at, and he was pretty much looking at anywhere because he really wanted to be a doctor, they had told him that they have a quota to meet, so it didn't matter how qualified he was for it. Because he was a white male, he was not going to get in there. And when I quit that job, he was currently trying to get in by going to the military first and becoming a doctor within the military. And I'm not sure if that actually worked out for him. The last I checked, it seemed like that was going to work, but he was still having issues with getting in somewhere, even going through the military, because you still get your doctorate with, you don't go to like Army school to get your doctorate. You still go to UCLA or wherever, Johns Hopkins. You still go to a public school to get your doctorate, and then you just serve in the military. So even at that point, he was still having issues. So I mean, the programs, they're like you said, Matt, they're turning that way to offer,
This is social justice. This is it. They want equity instead of equality.
Right.
Yeah. See, and that's where you get real dangerous, though, because especially in a profession like a doctor, you don't want somebody, especially your doctor, to be somebody who got, grandfathered in because of a social program.
Oh, right.
He didn't actually test into it himself. And that's where, you end up sounding maybe really racist, especially if you're a white person complaining about this.
I understand fully.
Yeah,
the road I've been going down lately. Yep.
Oh yeah.
That you got passed over for somebody who probably, if you look at the scores, might be less qualified than you.
I played the college game for way longer than I should have, and there were always I had far fewer options. Way fewer options as far as grants goes. I mean, I could get away with one for Polish people, but that was it. You know what I mean? No one was giving me anything extra for anything.
Just to remind people, we're all white.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't matter. Poor people, man. That's just the plight of poor people in general. It doesn't have, you're gonna have a hard life statistically if you're a minority, but that's the case no matter where you go in the world. There is disparity, psychological disparity felt by minority classes because they are the minority. They're the different one out, and that's just how our nature works. If people are afraid of the odd man out, it doesn't make it right, doesn't make it, acceptable. It just explains it. And once you know, then you can work with it, but knowing and saying it is you gotta name it. You gotta name the issue.
Yeah. We've tangented the social justice a bit. You want to steer it back, Ryan?
Yeah. Just a bit. Just a tiny bit. So let's see. So we started all that off with people playing the victim and basically, not really. I mean, I guess we weren't too far off. Basically, not owning up to their decisions, and that's one of the things. I've told people before. Just to I don't want to get off into this tangent right now, but talking about the whole free speech thing, I've had plenty of things where people will say, oh, well, it's a free country, I can say and do what I want. And my response is always the same thing, and that is, yes, you're absolutely free to say and do what you want, but you also have to be willing to accept the consequences that come along with that choice, to do what you're doing. You're free to make that choice, but that doesn't mean that there aren't any consequences to that freedom. So that's kind of, with the whole playing the victim thing. And actually, Jeremy, I'm really happy you brought that story up, because when I was I've seen those stories before, but I couldn't think of any. And the thing that always pops back into my head when I'm thinking about that is in the movie Liar Liar, where his secretary is talking about how her friend's house got broken into by the robber, and he slipped and fell through the skylight and landed on the knife, and then a lawyer sued her friend for him, coming in and cutting himself on the knife type of thing. It's the same thing with, and I'm kind of getting back into this, trying not to, but it's kind of the same thing to me, like with people that have pools, like that seems a little nuts to me. Like, oh hey, my kid, he came over into your yard and then he fell in your pool and he drowned, so I'm going to sue you. And it's like, I understand, and it's a tragedy. Don't get me wrong, it's a tragedy if a child drowns and all of these things. But at the same point, it's like your kid came into my yard and fell into the pool. It's like, I'm not supposed to have to barricade or safety proof my home for for a stranger or somebody that just happens to walk in. So
and especially like if you have a fence and that kid had to go over the fence or through the fence somehow.
Exactly. It's kind of getting into that. But sorry. So not, like I said, not to get back off on that tangent. So
that's fine. As long as you don't start talking about the Jews, I'll be fine. I mean, what?
Yeah.
Well, keep pushing that narrative.
So to get back to the whole police issue, and I don't remember if I said, so I'm very pro police in that I, for the most part, stand behind them, and the things that happen, I do understand it's a tough job, and every situation is different, and it's hard to say when you're not there. It's really hard to believe social media. But the next issue that I was going to talk about was the issue with the nurse Wubble, I believe is how you say her name. I'm pretty sure everybody's seen this video now, where the cop went in and was basically trying to arrest her because she told him no, she wouldn't get blood. And
he was trying to bully her first.
Right.
She didn't comply.
Right. He was trying to bully her into doing something that was illegal and that she wasn't supposed to do, and she was being nothing but cooperative with him. She was explaining everything to him. She
printed out the actual rules.
Yeah, she printed out the policy. She had the the manager or the hospital whatever the guy was on the phone to explain it with the cop right there. She was just trying to be as helpful as she could while still doctor-patient confidentiality is a thing, and she was trying to do her best. And even in the very first video that I saw of that, before all the other angles started coming out and everything, like the body cams and all that, the cop clearly says, she says, "Why are you doing this?" or "Why are you blaming her?" Is what the guy on the phone says, and the cop says, "Because she's the one telling me no." So that right there, I mean, it's like, oh, because she's the one that said it. It's like, all right, all of these people standing around you are all telling you the same thing, but because she's actually, in reality, she was the one being the most cooperative and trying to help him the most, so he takes her in.
I would give her crazy props because she was way more calm than I think I could have been in that exact situation. She never raised her voice. She was always polite to the police officer, and then it ended the way it ended. I just couldn't believe it.
Right.
Some context should be done too, because he wanted a blood sample from, but before all of it came out, you just think of a suspect. But what happened was kind of crazy. So they were chasing some guy, and the guy swerved into a semi truck, and the truck exploded. And it turned out that because then that guy died, but the truck driver didn't, and that's whose blood they wanted. And it turned out that guy was a semi-retired cop or something.
No, he was a reserve. He was a reserve cop.
Yeah, a reserve cop, yeah. And the truck driver was his full-time position. So that's why this cop was so aggro with her. And I think that goes into, I don't want to jump, but I think that really shows as to where the problem of this might be.
Yeah, that kind of,
because it's like, why did he want this guy's blood sample so badly?
That does kind of jump a little bit, but yeah. I mean, basically, that gets back to, before we make that jump at least, with now all the other body cam footage and all that, that is where, the fact that the fact that it was shown and that this was happening, and then what happened to the guy was, all that happened was he was taken off of the blood collection unit or whatever they called that specific thing.
He was still a detective.
Yeah, he was still a detective. He was still in the area, and that's one of the things where this is one of those stories where unfortunately I can't back the police on this because it was just so blatantly obvious of how in the wrong they were, and they just kept pushing it because it was... Actually, I'm not even sure, because they felt like if they pushed it more, they could bully their way out of it, or whatever the thought was on that. But the consequences for that is the thing that really troubles me, because this cop really screwed up. Basically he's breaking the law himself because he's trying to force this nurse to do something by bullying her into it.
Abusing the power of his position.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. That's probably the best way to put it.
He basically said that after seeing, like, she printed out the rules of we can't take blood from someone unconscious without consent or unless they're under arrest, and he says something that, like, it was like, so you're not going to give me the blood?
Yeah, he said.
I'm not getting the blood right now.
Yeah.
And then they're like, yeah, and it's like, okay, I'm done, and then charges her. And
right.
I was like, holy shit.
And he's extremely aggressive with it, which to his credit, the little bit that you can say, she was resisting, but still. It was one of those situations where, he was being obviously very forceful and more probably aggressive than he needed to.
It's just pure confusion.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like, why am I getting arrested?
She was just like, please don't touch me, more or less. Like, she wasn't fighting back, really.
Right,
other
yeah.
than not cooperating 100% with being arrested illegally. But...
Right, yeah. And that's where kind of the discussion. This is actually where I'm not sure how the best way to break off on the kind of multiple tangents of this, but I guess to keep following down the consequences path before we.
I think it's supervisor, whoever that guy was that came after. That's the next part.
Well, that's still on this story, or the main part of the story. But yeah, basically, so the guy's supervisor shows up and he's literally talking to this nurse while they have her handcuffed and sitting in the first officer's police car, and he's talking to her. He's telling her that, hey, I've been doing this for 22 years, and you should just let me get this blood, because if I'm doing it illegally, then it won't matter in a court of law, basically, or what, however he put it. But yeah, so he was basically saying, hey, just let me do this illegal thing, because it won't matter if it's illegal in the long run. Which again is just, just let me do what I want to do, and it'll come out later if it was right or not. And that's obviously not the way to go about these things.
Yeah, that's not how the law is supposed to work.
Right.
New York Times reports that the police officers will be barred from the patient care areas at the hospital in Utah, where all this happened. So they're no longer allowed to do that anymore, to go into that area. So.
Okay, so there you go. That's actually, I would say, at least one appropriate consequence to this whole situation.
Thanks to Laura for finding that. She's in the background running fact check shit.
I think
Laura's playing the Oracle role?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's Oracle.
I think it's not far enough, to be honest, because there was footage later of the chief guy, whatever his rank was, I don't give a fuck, talking to other officers admitting, oh yeah, I didn't realize they took blood already. I could have just got a court order for that, and it would have been done. And man, I really shouldn't have done that. And it's like going down the list of knowing that he's a fuck up, and saying this, and the other cops are just like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I really messed that up. We should have just waited, right? Like, basically, is what he was saying.
We just stood around, didn't do anything, and then people have the nerve to be like, I would never be an evil person. And then when something fucked up is happening, they're just standing there. They're just standing there because they don't want to be the ones. They don't want to be the ones because as soon as you say anything, that's it. Focus is on you.
There were like two other cops there, right? Who just watched.
Well, there was. I think there was one. There was one other actual cop, and then there were two hospital security guards.
Okay,
is what it was, and then more actual police showed up later. But in the moment in that video, it's that guy's partner. But yeah, there's two other guys there because there's like a big black guy that was one of the security officers, and then like another shorter kind of pudgy white guy, if I remember right, that was like, you could see they had like the little mini badges that let you know they're security but not real cops type of thing.
Okay.
So yes, there was hospital security there, and that's that's the thing too. His partner should have at that. And actually, you do see if you watch closely, his partner he realizes it's going bad because at one point he starts to kind of like reach out and grab the guy's shoulder, kind of like you see that moment where he's like, "Hey, you're going a little much," but then he like stops and just kind of shuts up, and that. Depending on
Brooke, I know what I'm doing.
Well, yeah, and that's one of those things. It kind of depends on the rank in that. I can understand where, like, if he's a lower ranking officer, he's probably like, do I question the senior ranking? I don't know. I'm not sure. Is this could get me in a lot of trouble? I'm not sure how to go about this. Personally, I say yes. You are a cop. You even if another cop is making a bad decision, you have to police the police themselves.
And then the rest of the bro force comes down on him like a ton of fucking bricks because he went against the senior officer. And the police force, they stick together. We stick together, bro. I mean, you get that shit. And he's got to go to work every day. He's got to go to work, and he's got to deal with that every day. So people will be like, well, yeah, he should have done something. Yeah, he
trust that guy now.
Should have done something, and then completely jeopardized his job and his way of life and everything that he knows and he's worked for.
He called a narc behind his back or to his face.
Right, and that's the part that really sucks about this. All in all, is because that's where it gets us into the whole. Unfortunately, and I understand it. That's why this was the part of this talk that's the hardest for me to really, I guess, wrap my head around and even really come up with a concrete opinion because it's so it's such murky waters for me because being in the military, I understand the brotherhood. And protecting each other, and you definitely have each other's backs no matter what. Behind each other, you're gonna protect each other and make sure everybody's safe and all that. But and that's the problem. There's different consequences or different not consequences, different situations. Unfortunately, it's like you have to be able to stand up and make that call. This was one of those moments because the problem is you get into this where you start having the few bad cops out there, and so I looked this up beforehand. So there are 765,980 cops in the U.S. That was actually a census that was done in, I believe it was 2014. They haven't done another complete count since then. I saw a couple things that bumped up that number by like 400 or so, but anyway, it's around that number. So you figure there's about, well, I'll just round it up to 800,000 cops now. And you figure that many, there's a lot more good cops than bad cops. But the problem is when you get the bad cops, the good cops are standing up behind them. And, in most situations, again, the situation is, that's where it just gets so hard and so murky for me to really give a concrete opinion on it because in most situations, yes, they're probably going to stick up and make sure that they're doing something right. But like this is clearly one where, the other cop should have said, hey, you're going too far. Just, step back, calm down. Let's go about this the right way. But like you said, that, that might turn into he gets back to the police station and now everybody's like, hey man, you didn't have Jim's back. What the fuck's up with that? Like we're all supposed to be in this together. And that's where, that's where I feel like the problem is with people in police because somewhere along the way, there was probably a cop that overstepped his bounds because they do have a lot of power. And the rest of the cops went along with it. The people lost trust in the police. So then the police distrust the people. And you get into this situation where more and more things happen where it's kind of it's probably almost an irrational thought. But I look at that and it's like, go back and watch fucking Andy Griffith and see how, or even a small town. Look at how small town sheriff's office interact with the populace. And it is so amazing. Like everybody knows everybody. It's a type of thing where and that still happens. But it is, if you've ever seen Andy Griffith, that's the scenario where everybody knows the sheriff. The sheriff knows everybody. He might say, hey, come on, Steve, you should stop doing that. Let's get this together. But they're a lot more, on a one-on-one basis with each other. And then you get into cities or an area where it's, where I guess there's just more cops than Well, I'm not sure. That I can't really put my thought together.
It takes away the personal aspect of what the cops are supposed to be.
Right.
It's taken away.
The cops are supposed to be what small town cops are.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be there to help and protect and do their job when something's happening. They're not supposed to be there for like in this situation to bully someone into getting what they want and abusing their power.
As far as my limited knowledge on this goes, I always picture that the military answers to the government, but the cops are supposed to answer to us because the military is foreign and the police are domestic. And the police are supposed to work for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
right.
Protect and serve.
Yeah. They are our servants. So the brotherhood aspect of it I understand it, you got your guys back because, you might get shot and all that, but that's where it becomes a little, I get a little angered at that kind of stuff. And it goes back to why did they want this guy's blood? I don't know if that's been revealed yet, but it's like, are they trying to protect something? To make sure to see if he was under the influence while driving, thinking that someone might turn it on him, or what?
There is no oversight. There's no oversight. And that was proven. That was proven after Michael Brown, and when everyone was like, "Well, what are the statistics? How many people are the cops killing? How many people are the cops harassing? What are the numbers?" And the FBI's like, "We don't know." And
we don't count that.
We don't count that. No police department is under any obligation to report these numbers, and so out of that. We've had to have independent groups like the Washington Post compile what they think is cop-related deaths from news reports, and then we got a guy, Roland Fryer. He runs stats over at the University of Harvard. Is starting to study individual cities as much as they will open up because it's really closed-lipped, and only cities so far. That's why you hear people like fucking Milo touting those statistics of the cop-related deaths and everything. It's not true. He's only getting numbers out of the cities that will let them study it, and those are the cities where they know their numbers are good. So, we don't know. That is the bottom line. We don't know. But what we know so far is only two years of data, which shows 1,000 people. 1,000 people a year get killed by police. 494 of them are white, 258 of them are black, 172 Hispanic, and 61 unknowns. So, but that's that's not even government oversight are giving us those numbers. So you can assume they're soft. They're soft numbers, just based on what tends to not get reported in the news. I mean,
what are you supposed to do after that, though? We can only speculate.
Yeah,
that just leads down this road of
we need oversight.
Shit.
The police officers, the police departments, they need oversight, especially if they're allowed to militarize. Holy shit!
Yeah, that is 100% got to be just a trickle-down effect of how much money we waste on our military. That
Brian,
we have so much extra equipment, they were like, just give it to cops.
Yeah.
What else are we going to do with it? Give it to cops, so that way they'll have it.
Take a guess. Take a wild guess how much money is spent on militarizing the police. Just take a fucking guess.
For the year?
For a year.
$100 million.
It's $39 billion.
Yeah, I was going to say probably like $25 billion.
Yeah, $39 billion. It's more than Germany's defense total budget.
That's just to militarize the police. Is that budget?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but we don't have enough money for schools. Yeah.
Brian, you said something before we started recording. Talk about the SWAT numbers.
Oh.
Just to get that out there.
The SWAT numbers. Well, no, I mentioned that in 2000.
Yeah.
Did I mention that already? In 1980s.
How many times they were called or that they were used?
I don't think that was before we started recording.
No, it wasn't. No. That was when we were talking about the drug busts and stuff like that.
What?
Was it?
Yes.
Oh.
In addition to that,
I don't know where I am. Fuck off.
Militarization started in 1997, and then right after 9/11,
that was a scapegoat for people that wanted to get.
It went nuts. So. It's fucking nuts, man.
I can understand if you want, like, the SWAT team specifically to have an armored car and fully automatic assault rifles to, respond to whatever threat you may have, like an active shooter situation with a gun that shouldn't be available to the public. But there's no reason for rank and file police officers to really need more than a 9mm, in my opinion. Maybe a breaching shotgun, but why else? What else does a cop really need?
Most cops go through their entire career never firing their gun once. That's most police officers.
Oh, yeah. And most of them, I believe, I think there was a statistic, too, that said most of the cops that do end up firing their weapon, that shortly after, a lot of them end up retiring because it was so traumatic to them. And that right there, so those are the good cops. It was so traumatic to them that they had to shoot and, say a good cop, it was so traumatic to him that he had to shoot somebody and kill them, that he was like, oh my God, I took this life, and I can't believe I had to do that. Okay, I have to retire. Like, to me, it's like, that sounds like a pretty good cop to me, that he was just like, oh, I really, like he feels that much remorse for it. I'm not saying, I wouldn't want every cop that ever had to do that to just say, yep, well, I shot somebody, I guess I'm done, because, then nobody's going to be experienced with it. But it at least goes to show you that there is humanity in, a lot of these cops, that it does affect them that much.
Well, Ryan, we were talking about... When we were talking about this before, Ryan, you had mentioned, you look at the disciplinary measures that are coming out of things like this with these cops that are getting a slap on the wrist and getting transferred and getting suspended briefly for doing like some pretty terrible things. From the military perspective, you had a really fascinating, what was the disciplinary actions like if you accidentally killed somebody or you stepped out of line in any way?
So that was kind of like the consequences thing, which, Jeremy, you had a comment on this too. So before I get right into the military one, so what started that conversation was, and we were talking about, again, like this cop with this nurse and that this guy just, hey, you don't get to be on that specific duty anymore. But, anything that was that bad. So me personally, I work at a social service place of employment, working with people that have mental and physical disabilities. Now, sometimes, these guys, they'll get in fights, and they will actually fight each other. Now, if I step in between that, which I usually do, because obviously I don't want these guys fighting or anybody getting hurt, but it's on the off chance, if I step in between one of these fights and say, I step in between and I end up, shoving one of them back or something. He falls over, hits his head, something. Right away, I get put on a national list that keeps me from being in any sort of social service job for the rest of my life. I immediately get fired, obviously. But yeah, any sort of social service job, immediate. And that would include me being a nurse or any type of medical personnel. As far as I know, any type of medical personnel I couldn't do anymore. I definitely couldn't work in any other jobs like the one I'm currently in. I couldn't work at nursing homes or anything like that. And that's just for the simple fact, if I would step in between a fight trying to protect the individuals and, someone gets hurt because I get in between it. And then, Jeremy, you brought up, I forgot how you had put it, but like with your job, that if you cuss somebody out or something.
Like, I can't even really be overly impolite to a customer without being in serious danger of a major reprimand. Like, if I just happen to, they caught me on a bad day and they're yelling at me about something that really doesn't matter, like it's not going to affect anybody's life, if I tell them to fuck off, I'm going to be fired. Right? Like, there's not going to be any really discussion about it. They're going to be like, you shouldn't have done that, I'm sorry, we have to let you go. And now I'm probably going to be fired just for telling a customer to fuck off.
Yeah, that gets into that. Jeremy. That gets into that freedom of speech thing, like I was saying before. But then, so to get on the comment that Brian's talking about, when we were discussing this, I brought up, so when I was in the military and we were, actively looking for terrorists, and some of these times we would either have a tip or flat out know where these guys were at. We still could not go and kick in this door and just guns blazing, just take this person out. They would have to shoot or attack us in some way first. And So basically, the consequence would be, if we're just walking down the street and somebody says, "Hey, that guy looks like a terrorist," bang, and just kills some random, some random guy in the street. That would be considered a war crime. You would immediately get, you would immediately get put on charges. You would get kicked out of the army. You would more than likely be imprisoned at Leavenworth, or if it was really bad, Guantanamo Bay. And then you would also be dishonorably discharged from the military. And for anybody that doesn't know, that's no joke. I feel like people don't realize how serious that actually is. A dishonorable discharge stays in any kind of file for you. So when you get a job, it shows up that there was a dishonorable discharge. Yeah, if you can, you could still get a job, but it's going to be a lot harder. And so the point...
it will affect your employment chances, like being a felon, basically.
Pretty much.
Worse than that.
Yeah. But so the point of all these things that we're talking about is, if those are the standards, that all of us are held to, how are police not held to that kind of standard? If that's something that this is a position of quite a bit of power within our own community, and that's just something. And again, I understand situations can be hard to judge depending on what's going on, but when you have these clear-cut cases, or say you have one, old Officer Smith keeps having charges of police brutality brought up against him, it's like, stop transferring this motherfucker and just kick him out of the force and ban him from being a cop anywhere in the world. Well, maybe not the world, but America at least.
Yeah, but at least in America, blacklist him, basically.
Yeah, that's just something that's the part where I don't understand it, with as far as, that's consequences for me at my job, which is, has no power whatsoever, on scale with a cop. And if our military is held to that, when we're, actively hunting terrorists that are blowing people up and massacring villages, men, women, children, all that, and we still have to, they're still held to that level of accountability and responsibility, and yet we don't have that level with, our own police force. That's where it gets a little nuts to me.
Yeah, that's where people start to lose their shit. Is the lack of accountability and oversight, really, and this really goes to show what frustration that can happen out of just the general public when there is an overstepping that happens, or a lack of oversight. So too much power is at their disposal with no one double checking them, in other words, and that always creates a huge disparity, and people have every right to be absolutely livid and absolutely upset. But that's my 2 cents.
Right, and that again, like I keep saying, it's with police. I do understand it. It's such a hard thing to judge on each case, but certain scenarios, repeat offenses, I could understand if maybe somebody got away with something because it happened once and maybe they made a bad call. It's not ideal, but if it was like a one-time offense where somebody screwed up and misread the situation, that's definitely a job where it's, high adrenaline, you have to make split-second decisions and you might choose wrong. But if it's something where, repeat offender, whether they're doing it maliciously or they're just incompetent, they should not be a cop.
I got a question. How much training did cops get compared to military? Do you feel like as far as military training goes, or that level of or intensity of training, that seems to be far more competent than the training these fucking cops get. As far as
I think the cops only have like a 6-week training period, right? Something like that.
Yeah. For what's asked of them, because
it's like wildly low.
Yeah,
I know that much.
They have to do a lot. Because their job is to defend them.
Especially in big cities with like multiple gangs.
Oh my god,
shit like that.
Yeah, you can't go in guns blazing. You gotta talk to these guys. You
gotta live with these guys.
Yeah.
Well, for one, okay, so first I'm going to say this might be something that we can call on Oracle again there in the background to maybe look up some actual statistics on it, because I really don't know what most police force, what their training regimens are. As far as, I guess, their basic training, well, you said if it's 6 weeks, that's a little, well, not a little, that's very fast, because even my basic training, which me being a medic, my basic training was a little shorter. It was only 9 weeks, whereas if you're an infantry soldier, it's 16 weeks, I believe. But then I have, going from there, I also have my medical training, which is, so basically I had 8 weeks of just, I don't know what you want to, it's basic, I don't know, soldier training, if you want to call it that, and then I had an additional 16 weeks of medical training. But either way, for a cop that's not even doing a basic 9 weeks, and that's, like I said, that's just to get you used to the basic duties. Once you go off to your actual unit, I mean, you train pretty much every single day in some shape or form on what you're going to be doing. And so that's the part where I don't know. I don't know how much continued training that the cops do.
Here we go. The length of time required to complete academy training averages 19 weeks. Various states require a minimum of 14 weeks, but for instance, the Memphis Police Academy usually takes 21 weeks to complete. San Diego has a program that goes for 6 months. But just to give you perspective, if you want to be a licensed cosmetologist, you got to do training for 1,600 hours. But the field training, if you look at Florida's minimum field training for officers, is 770 hours. So in other words, you need more training to be a fucking interior designer than you do a cop in some states. Every state is different, but that's some of the lowest ones. Yeah. There's no oversight. Again, going back to that. So it's not. So you're not getting enough training of what's being demanded of them.
Right. So that's. I've never heard that statistic. So yeah, that 770 hours. That's on the lowest end. Right. Yeah. But no, that's ridiculous, because, like I said, well, as far as with you, like you said, what you originally asked me about, as far as military to police, and that's the thing, the continued training, which that's where it seems like it'd be hard to do, because, like with the military, unless you're deployed, you're back in the States just doing nothing but training. Whereas cops, they're, quote unquote deploying every single day, that they go out into the streets. So I don't know what the police regiment is like. If it's, hey, I'm going to go out for one day, and then I have, one day a week I go out on patrol, the rest of the week I train. I know it's not that, but that's the thing. I just don't know how much that is, but that's what I feel like. Okay, yeah, you should be continuing to go through this stuff, continuing to train, and learning every part of it. I don't know, just to get to that point where you can do everything perfectly, or just as best as it's humanly possible to do. Maybe, I don't know. That's 770 hours though. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, maybe
it looks like I found what I think is the base for Illinois. Says this basic law enforcement training course description is a 14-week, 560-hour basic law enforcement course, which exceeds the requirements set by Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board for all new police officers in the state of Illinois.
So it's only 560 hours in Illinois to become a cop?
Yeah, 14-week, 560-hour basic law enforcement course. It says there's most likely going to be supplementary training afterwards, but this is where you start, basically.
Okay. Well, yeah. So that could be a little misleading, because unless it fully says that you can go out on the streets after that 560 hours and you're basically full powers of a cop. I mean, does it say anything like that, or is it because like supplemental training? It's like, okay, that's almost like with me saying, all right, I had basic, But then after basic, I had to go to my job training, which, for me was a medic.
Yeah, the question is, when do they get a gun and when do they get to go off on the street?
This gives you OC spray certification, baton certification, optional patrol rifle operator course, police Spanish course, 20-hour street level Spanish. I'm not sure how that's barely going to get you going. Taser certification, juvenile specialist certification. These are all optional courses. Policing in a multiracial society.
Racist.
Yeah.
Gay, bisexual, transgender ally training.
Okay.
That's interesting. That's really interesting because
Wow.
well, they need that because you speak. That speaks back to what I was saying about with specific issues concerning mental health and
Oh yeah, no.
The
I was
LGBT.
just saying wow, because I didn't expect that to be a thing.
Yeah, right.
It's
impressive.
a
but they have
3-hour
boys.
optional course at no cost.
Ah, okay.
So
Yeah,
they
well, they
pay
have
for that
all
one for
boys
free,
town.
but it's only 3 hours.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, and I don't know about you yet. To me, that's a plus in my book that they do offer all these things, because obviously not every single cop needs to know every single one of these things. Obviously it would be best if they did,
Yeah,
but
there's a lot of jobs in the police force.
but yeah, exactly. And again, it depends where you're at. Where again, little small town sheriff. That what does he need to know about like, I don't know what the course would be, but like some sort of like big city type of policing or whatever he may be doing. So, but the fact that they do have all those different optional courses, that at least shows me that they do, that they do have continued training going on. I would assume there's probably so many that you could do that would just, probably be pages and pages and pages of courses.
They need obligatory. It needs to be obligatory. They need specific psychological training in how to deal with whatever type of people they're going to be dealing with, because as public servants with weapons, right? Essentially,
Right.
And most of these calls that cops go on are domestic disputes. So you're mitigating between two arguing people, right? So like, they need specific training on how to handle people arguing.
Baby mama drama.
Yeah, well, yeah, because that's the majority of their calls are domestic disputes. Like you look at like Christmas, right? The majority of the police are being called for families destroying each other. So it's like angry arguing families. So like it's and that end up turning violent, but real violent. But handling that is like, okay, you should be fully aware of what you're doing. And you look at like how the police and the military have, not just the military, but the militarized police have handled situations with protests and situations where they come down like a hammer. And Ryan, you can speak to this. You got these guys who don't know how to hold their guns right. If they're marching in holding their guns wrong from the very beginning, their body language is sending threatening messages to people. And that escalates the situation. So you're unconsciously escalating the situation just with your body language that you're not aware that you're doing because you don't have the proper training. And people are reacting to that, and you don't understand why they're reacting to that. And so you react back. And then it just goes on until someone gets shot. So that's crazy. It just speaks to the problem.
I found the rest, by the way.
You found what?
I found the rest of the training required. So basically, the one I mentioned already is just the basic law enforcement officer training. That's before you join your police force specifically. That has to be a minimum of 480 hours. You must achieve an academic average of 70% and successfully demonstrate skills during practical exercises across the board. After that, you will graduate from the police academy and you will begin a 14 to 16 week on-the-job training in whatever department you'll be joining after that, with a certified field training officer who will instruct, guide, and nurture new recruits through their field training. The final stage of their on-the-job training occurs when the recruit takes over the activity on the street, and their FTO shadows them while providing guidance, encouragement, and corrective action as necessary. It looks like that goes on for at least another month or two, and then you are released as a full-fledged officer.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm not
So
I'm not
it
sure on
sounds
that,
like
but to get
overall, the whole process would probably take about a year
Which-
before you're basically by yourself
which that I'm okay with. I mean,
or with
Yeah, that
with
sounds
your partner, at least in the state of Illinois.
yeah, that seems like enough. I mean, I would still expect continued training to go on, but I mean, a year. That definitely makes me feel okay. Brian, to your comment about kind of like the rioting or the protests or whatever, and again, that's another one where I can definitely see both sides of it. I understand, like you were saying, like your point. Yes, I definitely agree that sometimes you do see where it's like, all right, you don't even know how to use this gear that you're using because you haven't trained on it enough, that's obviously wrong. And that's the thing too. In any protest, the mere presence of the cops, especially if it's wearing full-on riot gear and they have the shields and all that stuff, that's immediately going to make tensions rise higher. And I'm sure the cops know that, but I guess in my head, that's why I do like how they it's the shields out front type of thing where it's like, okay, yep, just here with shields, but there's always the guys behind them that have guns and whatnot. But when it comes to riots and protests, it's so hard to determine the right course of action with that, because I've listened to some cops and former police talk about this, and to one point of it, they really are there just to make sure that it doesn't get violent. But the problem is that when it even starts to get a little bit violent, the best course of action is to just stop it immediately before it gets wound up even more. And that's where it's, again, I keep saying it, situation, because it's always going to be different. But, if you have one person that suddenly decides to toss a rock or, just, whatever it may be, it's like, okay, you need to shut it down right then and there, because if you wait and like, okay, let's see if this goes anywhere, very quickly you could have, a protest that turns into a full-blown riot, and now you have hundreds of people all bearing down on you or going after each other. And once that happens, it's going to be next to impossible to get it'd be, well, maybe not impossible, but it's going to be a lot harder to get control of that situation. Whereas if say that guy that throws a brick or something, right away you say, all right, nope, down on the floor, you're gone, you're out. Then it's like, okay, did that handle the situation? Hopefully. If not, well, at least you have one more out of the way. So, and again, that's the way I think of it, but I probably think on it more in a military aspect of, kind of, I can't think of the word, like force control of force or something. I don't know what to call it, but that's the way I think of on it. But again, I can see the other side too, where they say, well, shit, there's cops here with riot shields, batons, and fucking machine guns. Yeah, I'm going to be a little more on edge.
Because there's a big difference between a police line with just batons and tear gas and shields, and a police line with all those things, and then other officers in full body armor with weapons designed to kill you. That really just, I feel like that can't not put people on edge when you are faced with a deadly weapon.
Right. Well, and that's where, and again, that kind of rounds us back to the whole, the whole consequences of your actions thing, though. At the same time, like when I look at that, it's like, okay, there's, a line of cops and they all have rifles. My thought, the thing that goes in my head is, I better be on my best fucking behavior, not, hey, I'm going to go smash this dude with a brick or, start swinging a pipe or, a baseball bat around. I'd be like, there's a firing squad over there. I'm going to stop anything remotely aggressive right now.
Or like Antifa showing up in also riot gear and black masks and weapons.
Yeah,
they're the good guys.
You're getting me. That's fucking Antifa.
Anarchists have always ridden that fucking wave. They've always ridden on the coattails of like the socially progressive trying to do what is best for everybody. You know,
You have the right to do this. Oh God, don't shoot me. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Oh God.
And then
I didn't mean to set that Molotov cocktail fire in the middle of the street. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's another. Hey, consequences of your actions, man. You're free to throw that Molotov cocktail, but when you get shot because of it, well, that's the consequence.
Well, that's where like to go back to something that Brian mentioned earlier. It might have been before the podcast originally started, but like where you're in that situation with the police officers and they have decided to make their move against you, and you have to decide in that moment whether you're going to try and stand up for your rights because you know you've done nothing wrong, or if you're just going to sit down and accept whatever it is that the police do to you. And
so they're
really trained in
If
how
you're
to deal with
peacefully
that.
protesting.
Yeah, like if you're peacefully protesting,
yeah.
you have to decide whether you care more about what you're supposed to have as your rights as an American citizen with the police who are supposed to protect and serve you, or if you're just going to submit to the authority figure with the gun, whether he's justified in having it or not, pointed at you. It's a real hard decision to make, and I don't feel like anybody really makes that decision rationally. You just panic and pick one.
Yeah. Well, I think if you think about it beforehand, you can gear yourself up to make the right decision in the moment when it needs to. When you need to have it, and that decision first and foremost needs to be do what the fucking cop tells you. There is a really good interview by Sam Harris. Does a really good interview by Scott Reitz, who is a 30-year vet, 10 years at SWAT, and 15 years advanced firearm training for the LAPD. This guy, he gives a fantastic description, and he analyzes at the time what was the police shootings going on, but gives multiple stories of like, you're dealing with an animal with a weapon. Bottom line. Yeah, and whether you like it or not, your rights are not a buffer. Your rights aren't this shield that's going to protect you if that cop decides to mess you up, right?
Yeah, they don't save you in the moment. They just allow you to sue later, basically.
Exactly. So none of this, when you're in an intense situation, nothing that's happening right now is going to get sorted right now. You have to, and he maps it out really well. He tells people, like, look, all of this is going to get sorted later. The only thing you need to do is to do exactly what the cop tells you to do. They have the weapon. They most likely have the jump on you. You're not going to win in this situation. Like what Ryan said earlier, you can assume that any action that goes against what they're telling you could lead to your death. Just listen to what they say and do it. And it's just like, there's just people need to hear that in general. Because in general, people are fucking stupid. It's like, you think you have a right to do whatever you want. Yeah, I have a right to blah, 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 blam. Now you have a right to not exist. Right? So what's more important to you? Like this immediate this immediate sort of anger, and you feel justified doing or saying something really stupid, and you lose your life, or like you get to keep your life, and then you can screw that cop later on in a court of law and get and it'll sort itself, or you can work to sort it out. But like, yeah, do what they say, seriously. Like, and he even talks about himself. He's like, all the experience and all the authority that I have, and I've been in situations where you get some Joe Blow cop who is just having a bad day and he's yelling at you, and he's like, and me, and I could pull the "do you know who I am" card, and he's like, screw that, yes sir, sorry sir, I'll do better next time, and just say whatever. It's just to go, because what do you want to deal with? Do you want to end your life, or do you want to wake up the next day? And then depending on the situation, do you want to go about your merry way, or do you want to spend a night in jail? Depends on what it all depends on you.
Well, that's what's delusional about groups like Antifa and the extremist side of BLM, where they go on and on about dirty cops and kill all cops and all this stuff.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Don't they understand that they can't win?
No, never going to. They never did.
They can't win in the streets against cops.
Yeah, of course not.
Not even public support, but I mean just the gear, or because they think they're fucking Che Guevara out there fighting a revolution.
Yeah.
They will get wiped the fuck off the map if they full on try to fight the police with violence. I don't. That's not how you make change anymore.
Yeah,
you
and
can't.
just end
It's
up getting a
impossible.
lot of innocent people hurt at the same time.
Right. Well, and that's the thing too. When you have to remember that even if you are innocent in whatever's happening, and I'm kind of looking at this from the whole protest/riot perspective, because plenty of people go to protest and then shit goes down, and it's like, oh shit, like they're legitimately there to peacefully protest. They're not there to cause any harm or violence, and again, most cops are good cops looking to do the right thing, but when shit starts going south and there's and a protest turns into a riot, these cops are trying to get this under control. They're trying to stay safe themselves. So if a cop comes up and you're trying to be peaceful about it, and he just went through, say he just went through and had to take down 5 violent protesters, 5 rioters at that point, and then he comes up to you next, he's already going to be pretty charged up. So when he says get down, just get the fuck down. It's like don't go against. I mean, that's kind of I was sitting there thinking about it because I'm looking at this number on my piece of paper. Like the whole 765,980 cops. So out of that number, I'll just say, and I have no idea, but let's just say the 980 are all of the bad cops. That's pretty small compared to the big 765,000. But so you have to realize that most cops are there to do the right thing and be the good guys, but when it's in a mass hysteria situation, they have to, in a split second, decide who's threatening them and who's not. So the easiest thing for them, or the easiest way for them to see that, hey, you're not a threat, is for you to listen, or even just not be there. Or, if shit starts to go down, just get the fuck out of there. Or if you're already caught up in it, I wouldn't say lay down because I wouldn't want anybody to get trampled, but at least, stand near the wall, somehow in a non-threatening way, whether that's standing up against the wall with your hands on it, or if that's you kneeling in a corner, something like that. But, you have to understand that's in those situations, and that's where I feel like people just don't get that, oh, it's a protest. Well, I'm not doing anything wrong. Well, yeah, but there's, 100 people that are, and you expect the police to be able to instantly tell who's wrong and who's right. It's not like there's, it's not like it's like a video game and there's a little indicator over your head like, oh, all the people with the red diamond, those are the bad people, and all the people with the blue, those are the innocent people. They don't have that. They have to figure this out, and they're trying to do it in mass hysteria. So, that's where, I don't know. Even I can't even say with the, most training in the world, training every single day, that's still, no matter how much training, no matter how much training that cop has individually, they have no training on each civilian out there. They have no idea what each individual civilian is going to do. So no matter how much they train in that aspect, at least, it's still going to come down to them and trying to assess you as fast as they can. So.
Well, when you put yourself into a situation where you're combating against a potentially tyrannical element, and then when that element turns tyrannical, you turn around and bitch about the very thing that you taunted in the first place, and so yeah, it gets serious really quick, especially with lots of people, like things happen very fast, and yeah, so you can't go to some things like that and expect, like, I've been to protests in Chicago. You have to always be aware. It's immense, and that's just in Chicago. That's not accounting for the kind of protests that you see happen, like, just say in Washington. But, like, when people protested the G4 summit?
G4 summit, yeah.
That happened in Chicago, it was intense. I had to go downtown for art supplies, and I'm like, weed
of all the days.
Yeah, did you really, Brian? Did you really have to go?
I didn't really have. Well, I did have to go, but I just decided to see what was going on too. I was like, let's kill 2 birds with one stone. See what happens, dude. It's intense, and the cops in Chicago, they know how to manipulate a crowd. They're really good at doing what they do, for the good or the bad. I've been on the good end and the bad, and receiving that way. So I guess I can speak to both sides of it, where, like, yeah, there are times when people are flipping the fuck out, and you want the cop on the horse to step in between you and bully this fucking protester into a corner away from you because you don't want to deal with whatever violent repercussions are coming your way. And at the same time, it's like I've had cops like nearly run me over because they were trying to push the group of us, onto the sidewalk while we were protesting in the streets, and they will use those same fucking horses. They'll ride right up on top of you, and you just get this horse.
Horses are scary.
Oh yeah, they are.
Yeah,
they are. And then they'll use their asses. They'll fucking turn them and use them right just the whole mass of people, and they'll slowly drive their cars on an angle and just gradually push you. And if you hit the car, if you let the car hit you, then they have reason to fuck you up, right? Like, because they don't know the difference between you attacking their car versus them just gradually bumping into you, as it happens, because they're in a car and you need to move out of the way. So, like, yeah, in general, like, as far as my past goes, I have no reason. Don't have a lot of reasons to like the cops if I look at my personal experience, but that would just be totally biased because as a whole. They're needed, obviously. So, yeah.
I love holes, so.
Oh, yeah, holes.
What are we talking about?
Which hole you put your cop in?
Oh, God, a cop can go in every hole. But I think the preferred one is the donut hole, obviously.
Oh.
The donut hole. Oh.
Cops, donuts, right?
I'm not.
It's true.
I'm not fucking any cops. I'm just.
No, man. The cops fuck you.
I mean, like, if I can just avoid the entire sexual situation with police officers, that's really what I'm gonna go for.
Jeremy.
No,
What?
Brian, no. Brian, let it
There's
pass.
another-
Not the time. I apologize for the joke. This is my fault. I'm sorry.
All right.
You can message me later.
Yeah.
So with that, I feel like we pretty much covered everything. Unless, is there something that I'm forgetting that you guys, or anything else you guys wanted to?
I was struggling for a minute there to try to make a SWAT cat joke, but I failed. And the old cartoon SWAT cats. Aside from that, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah.
I've got one thing that I would like to add.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Jeremy.
There was a moment in the car ride home today. I was talking to my wife, Sarah, and we were discussing how I was going to be doing this podcast with you guys later, and she wondered if we could talk about, and none of us are raising children right now, but in the future, do you see yourself raising your child to always trust the police and that they're there to protect you no matter what? Or do you give them, like, the reality of the situation, that there are some shitty cops out there who might just be looking for an excuse? Don't give it to them.
Depends on the age. I would say first.
True.
Because cops usually are pretty good at protecting kids no matter what.
Yeah.
But we do have,
like
like,
once you
that
cross over
one
into
case
the-
for where that cop just blew away that 9-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Well, that is a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, 'cause I'll tell you a funny story. I called the cops on my dad more than once when I was a kid, and the one time that I did where it got really bad, I was bleeding out of my eye. Okay, just to give you an idea. The cops showed up. It was an older cop. I'll never forget this motherfucker's face. And he looked at me with blood coming out of my eye, and he looked at my dad, who was giving him this long story, and he's like, "Yeah, sometimes I feel like hitting my kids too." And he like the back of his hand against his other hand, like sometimes he feels like giving his kid a good 1-2, and that was my first experience with a cop. I called the police, come save us. They show up, and they're like, you deserved it. Sometimes I feel, and I'll never forget it. I'll never fucking forget it. So yeah, you want to be as realistic as possible with your fucking kids, because that the reality it doesn't discriminate what age you are.
You also gotta take the mental capacity of the child too. That's a hard question.
Yeah, it is.
How to tell like someone who can't understand some things. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think that still goes along the lines of basic, like Matt said. I mean, that's a lot for a kid to process. But I think the baseline that you would want to go for is basically, or at least me personally, is, you know, just teaching a kid as best you can to recognize a good person from a bad person. You know, obviously it's not like I'm going to tell my kids, hey, go out and trust everybody and listen to what they say because they're an adult, you know. Cause,
Candy's real good, you guys.
yeah, it's like that's how you get your kid kidnapped. But, yeah, so
you
it's...
bring that home to me, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
That would be a tough question, and, you know, who knows by the time that we actually have kids that it's, you know, there may be something else differently going on.
Yeah.
They'll have chips in them, and they'll be able to just be like, okay, you're good. We'll
Right.
all be chipped and barcoded.
Yeah, Jesus. Because, well, and, you know, and this is really looking deeper into a question that, you know, may not even need to go this far, but teaching your kids just to say, hey, that's a cop, trust him wholeheartedly, that seems stupid to me because, and this is the main thing that popped in my head was, anybody could go and make themselves look like a cop, especially to a kid, and that would be an easy way for them to steal the kid or, you know, sexual assault, anything like that, or anything. I mean, I'd say the same thing with, you know, a fireman or any kind of civil servant because, you know, most kids look at civil servants, it's like, ooh, the fireman's so cool. Oh, I want to be a cop. I want to be a fireman. I want to, you know, so to immediately teach them.
Most kidnappings are done by someone the child knows.
Right, yeah. So the fact of just saying, hey, trust this person in uniform wholeheartedly, like that right away to me sends off warning bells like, no. But yeah, like Matt said, it's a tough question because, you know, it's not like I would ever want to like raise like a little delinquent kid that's just, you know, run around saying fuck the police, you know, at like 5 years old or something, but, you know.
No, I think it's important to let children be aware of, you know, that humans are animals. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in like, look, like you said, Ryan, like there are good people and there are bad people, and you have to learn to identify them. And in general, you know, as far as children go, you want to teach them to be very wary and distrustful because that's gonna. What is the outcome that's going to get them to survive? Right?
Right.
And that's to be distrustful. But if they're in a situation where there's authority, because my parents taught me that, like, look, if you're in an intense situation, you look to somebody who's in authority, and that's usually a public servant, a police officer, or a firefighter. So, like, you know, the general trust in the fact that they're going to do the job that they've signed up to do, you know, statistically, that's just smart. Yeah, I mean, okay, but at the same time, you want to let them know that, like, yeah, well, but also people are people, you know, like,
right.
And you can't assume that you can't assume you're going to be safe just because you're into civilization. Civilization is just, you know, a fucking concrete jungle, and you know, so yeah, you got to be careful of people in general if you're smart. You know?
True.
I would say the best thing that I could think of is try and be as honest with your kid about everything that you can. Obviously, you don't want to like make the kid just fearful of life by telling him all the bad things when they're a little kid. But you know, that's one of the things. I feel like parents, you know, they try to shield their kids, especially nowadays. They try and shield their kids from so much that they don't let them experience it, and they're basically forming the kid's opinion on something for them. You know, it's something like that the kid should be forming his own opinion by witnessing it and seeing it. So I would say it'd be, you know, you have to have a nice balance of honesty and not, you know.
Oh, yeah. Because otherwise they're going to Google, you know, like, what is snuff film? You know, like, and they're going to ask Google whatever they think of it. You don't want to talk about it with them, they're going to find someone online who's going to talk to them about it. So.
Yeah.
or their personal AI, because, you know, that's going to be the future.
Yeah. Siri, what is insert ... So whatever,
Should I trust
Siri
police?
ends up being done.
Siri, should I trust the police?
Yes, trust your overlords. I mean,
I may have to actually go and ask Alexa that after we get done with this podcast. I want to see what she says.
You should record that shit.
I'll immediately be put on an FBI watch list or some shit.
Yeah, right. The Illuminati little bloop. They're like, Ryan Needers.
No, ask it how to make a pipe bomb. That'll really get you on the list.
Yeah, that'll.
All right. Well, yeah. So
I think on that note,
I feel like we've covered everything. A lot of good topics and different points of view on things, and just general, I guess, our thoughts on stuff and some food for thought for anybody that's listening. And
you know what we forgot to do? Sorry to interject, but we forgot to start the podcast saying that we understand our positions as privileged straight white men. Man, we're gonna lose viewers.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yay.
Don't assume my gender, Matt, or my identity.
What? I know your gender, bitch.
You're assuming. You're assuming it.
No.
I'm changing it.
Damn it.
I didn't see that coming.
anybody who has the audacity to tell me that my opinion has no value because I'm a cis white male can suck my cis white dick. That's how I
Yep.
That's not how you foster like a conversation or allyship by telling me my opinion doesn't matter.
But that is how you ruin an outro to a podcast.
Yes. Yes, way to go. All right, so maybe more on that in a different one. So once again, this is Omni Lucid Media. I am Ryan Needers with Brian Skoll and Matt Miller, also known as Beard Plays, and our friend Jeremy, who will probably continue to show up on random casts in the future. So definitely like, share, comment, and all the fun things. We are on Facebook and obviously on YouTube. And we are getting some t-shirts now, so as always, if anybody sees the t-shirts and would like to order them and help put some support our way, we definitely appreciate it. And
we got tiki torches to buy, so...
Wow. and on that note...
Mosquito-free.
Mosquitoes. Yeah, mosquitoes. It's apparently summer in September, so we need them again.
Yeah, we need citronella, people. We need lots of citronella.
The world is dying.
All right, so everyone have a good one, and we hope to hear your comments.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah!